Doubleheader after the summer break, we were in Zandvoort, now we make our way to the Monza GP in Italy. One of Formula One's most historic tracks, and we wait for it to come every single year because of the moments that it's given us. It's been around since the 1950s, and yes, it has undergone some changes, but it still continues to be the temple of speed. Very simple layout, but one that everybody loves. It gives us great racing moments, and the atmosphere around Monza has always been insane, in the best of ways. When you think of Monza, you think of Ferrari for this track, and in 1996, Schumacher had his first victory with Ferrari in Monza. That year actually was an underperforming Ferrari, the F310, and he did end up starting third. It was a pretty chaotic race, avoiding the tire barriers at that very iconic first chicane, and won by nearly 20 seconds, in a car that was not dominant that year. It was his first of 5 at Monza. He is the driver for Ferrari that has the most victories here. In 08, we also had Vettel's historic first win, one of my favorite drivers, and he did it in a Toro Rosso. Now there's 2 victories with a Toro Rosso here, we'll go over that one later. But this one, he secured pole and led for 49 of the 53 laps. They went for a extremely low downforce setup in the wet. Somehow it paid off. Even Vettel was shocked to see what happened. And this was a breakthrough moment for him. It put him on the map, and then he ended up going on to win 4 championships with Red Bull. As I stated, 2 Toro Rosso victories here. Yes, it was an AlphaTauri, but we'll always know this team as Toro Rosso. Pierre Gasly in 2020 ended up winning this GP. That radio message still gives me chills to this day. And right after that, Monza provided pretty much every single year. In 21, we had Daniel Ricciardo winning. After what was a very messy 2021 for him, that victory was huge and a great moment for the McLaren team. It was a 1-2, shockingly enough. Yes, that was with the help of Max and Lewis getting tangled up, but quite the GP in a very entertaining season. Then in 24, Charles ended up getting his second victory, and this one was much less expected than that in 2019. In 2019, he had that very legal engine, which made him insanely fast in the straights. But in 24, he went for a very bold tire strategy, ended up paying off against the very fast McLarens. Yes, they were fighting amongst each other a little bit, but that wasn't the reason. It was Charles that made the difference and ended up getting that victory. I expect in 25, we should get, yet again, a good Monza. It's close this season, not close enough. It would be much better if the Ferrari car was consistently up there. I do think this is going to be a better track for them. Now, going over the preview, the tires stay the same. It's still going to be C3 to C5, but there was definitely a good differential in the strategy last year. Most teams ended up going with a 2-stop because of the heat, and they didn't think a 1-stop would work. But then the man at Ferrari ended up proving many wrong and achieved what I thought was one of his best victories. The tire stress is around the 3. That really depends on the heat. It's a Ascari section that can really cause tire wear. And then, of course, with the cars being at 1 downforce, they just go through their tires a little bit quicker because of the sliding and the slow speed sections. But track evolution is also pretty big here. Every year we see some drivers get tangled up, making their qualifying lap, fighting for that track position. It's very important. You wouldn't believe it. Even with the track being used so much in the season, it gets pretty damn dusty. And we definitely have some headlines going into this GP. I mean, Lando ended up getting that DNF. Will the Mercedes engine be a little tricky here because cooling's been a bit off for even Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin's had its problems. The Williams cars have DNF'd a lot due to engine cooling, so you definitely got to look out for Mercedes. Shockingly enough, it hasn't been that season for reliability, even though they were the most consistent team in 24, 23, and even 22. And plus, we're going to have to look at these rear wings, super flat-lined. Very cool to see the upgrades always get brought here. It's that type of track like Monaco that requires a very specific setup and specification in general. And then there's always a team or two that ends up outperforming what they usually do in the season here at Monza because of its very specific characteristics of the track. But make sure you guys make your way to UnchainedMediaInc.com to make your predictions for this weekend. I was shocked to see that somebody got 4 out of the 5 positions correct. Even with Hadjar getting on the podium position, that's pretty insane to me. WD64 had a 28 out of the 35 possible points in exact position. Absolutely insane to guess when the top 5 was Oscar Piastri, Max, Isaac, George, and Alex Albon. That to me was insane that he pulled it off. Let's see if somebody can do 5 out of 5. I think we've had it one time this year, even with it being a little bit more predictable than we all thought it would be. But before I make my predictions on the Unchained race week, let's talk about the best, the worst teams, and the usual other predictions I put in before my top 5. The worst teams coming into Monza, it's a different type of track. Every team is going to have the same setup, usually. Sometimes we see a wild card like Red Bull in 23, but I don't think we're going to see that through the midfield or really the teams that are fighting for that 10th, 9th, and 8th position. But I still believe the Alpine car is 10th based off of its engine, and plus it's a straight line track. That's all that really matters. They never really do good here, even with them pretty much putting nothing on the rear wing. So I'm going to put Alpine in 10th, but then the 9th and 8th position, it's a real toss up there. For me, even with them getting on the podium, I do believe that Racing Bull's car to be draggy. Now, they had an okay spot. If you look at it from Isaac's end, it wasn't great. From Liam's, it was all right. So it's definitely a toss-up, and I believe Aston will be 8th. I think the Williams, the Haas car, and the Sauber car all have a bit more straight line speed because Aston struggled pretty damn badly in Spa. Will it be like this time? I'm not sure. They had a very weird setup there. I'm still going to put them in 8th. Arguably, they could be 9th, but even Sauber is fighting for that 9th and 8th position. Williams and Haas, I think, will be the top of the midfield. Now, looking at best teams, McLaren is always the best car to put up there, so I will put them in P1, but I do believe the Ferrari car has a chance to actually fight for a victory here, so I will put them in P2. It's Monza. They make those track-specific changes, and it usually works. They're typically up there in qualifying. Can they do it in the race? We'll have to see. I don't think they can purely beat them off of race pace. Maybe they'll have to go for a gamble like in 2024, but I believe the Ferrari car will be a lot closer than it was in Zandvoort. That was very far off. And in P3, I'm just going to put up Mercedes. I think it's going to be a fight between the two best teams and then probably everybody else behind. Very hard to say if Mercedes has the straight line speed to be competitive enough with the Ferrari and McLaren. But P3 for me, I think the Red Bull is going to be the worst out of those top 4 teams. Now looking at my Unchained driver for the weekend, I am going to put up Charles Leclerc. I believe this is his track. He usually does an insane job here at tire management, racecraft-wise. It's just a Leclerc track. When I think of Monza, his face pops up. It's just, since he's been in the sport, he's always performed well here. I do believe in 25 it's going to happen again, especially after the incident that happened in Zandvoort. That was not a nice way to see him go out. But we did get a couple of very iconic pictures. For my surprise team, I typically put what team I think is going to do much better than they usually do. I'm going to go the opposite way this time. I'm actually going to put Racing Bulls as a surprise team because they were just on the podium. I don't think they're going to even be fighting for points this weekend. I just believe that car to be draggy, but it's very hard to tell. Like I said, with every team having the same setup, it makes it harder, but that's my surprise for the weekend. And my worst drive for the week, I've thrown up Kimi a couple of times. I'm going to cut him some slack here. And something tells me he'll do a little bit better at his home GP. I actually think all the rookies should do a pretty decent job here, especially considering Gabi had a race where he went from 20th to 1st in Monza, with a lot of luck, but still pretty insane. So it might be random, but for some reason I'm feeling Pierre Gasly as the worst drive in Monza. He did win in 2020. It's either a great drive for him here or it's quite the reverse. But the Alpine car is going to be bad. It's kind of a gimme, but let's see what happens. Now we can go over my top 5 for the Unchained race week. And I was a little ambitious last time out. I put Fernando in the top 5. I'm going to be a little bit more reserved this time. Let's not make it too crazy. So in P5, I think the driver that's always pretty much in this position, no matter what race it is, I'm going to put George Russell. Very consistent year. I still believe he's probably been the best driver and most consistent this year. I don't know, you can probably throw up Oscar and Max into that situation, but they're all very close. P5 for George. In P4, I do believe even with the 5-place grid drop, the Ferrari car is going to be strong. I have a feeling Lewis will put himself in the top 5, so P4 on the grid for him in his first time in Ferrari at Monza. He did good in Zandvoort. Without the actual crash, his pace was consistent, better than we've seen it throughout the season. It's been rough. I think Monza will be a little bit better. And then, of course, we have the McLarens left, and then we'll have to see who we drop in. I don't actually have a driver that's typically in the top 5. And of course, McLaren cars, you can never really count them out of any GP. But I do believe Lando, even with Zandvoort being an okay race, it should have been a track that he destroyed Oscar on. It shows that Oscar put in a bit more work in the summer break, really improved himself on tracks that he was losing by 20 to 30 seconds sometimes to Lando Norris. He ended up getting a grand slam, the only one of the year so far. Good job for Oscar. I do believe he's going to be ahead of Lando again. And of course, it's hard to really put up Charles as winning, right? But I actually have him winning this race. I do believe the Ferrari car has a chance. And like I said, you think of Monza, you think of Leclerc. He's going to be my P1. Oscar Piastri in P2. Crazy to say that we're going to have a win that's not going to be the papaya car, but I believe it. If it's going to be any track, it's going to be Monza. Fastest lap, I'm even going to give that to Charles himself. And for Constructors winner, based off of the math, it's going to be Ferrari. This is probably going to give me very little points this weekend, but I'm going for it. That's what my gut and head is saying. But make sure you guys drop your 5. I want to see if anybody can get 5 again. That's just insane. Maybe it's going to be me this time. But thank you all for watching. Make sure to drop a comment down below. Leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world. And peace.